Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this one, we're talking about 10 different Sony camera hacks or modifications that you can employ to improve image quality and just make using Sony gear easier. And pretty much all of this information comes from my camera guides, which is how these videos are supported. I just released my Sony a7 IV video guide. You can check out the trailer and the page to learn more. And I'm taking $10 off the guide for the next couple of days. The guide also includes my full Sony LUT pack. So if you want to check that out, I'll put information down in the description. So let's get on to our list of 10 hacks, starting with number 1, and that's to use the Sony Image Edge app on your computer to control your camera. In short, this is a free piece of software that you can download and simply connect a USB cable from your camera to your computer, and you'll have access to a live view feed of your camera with the option to start and stop recordings, control a ton of camera settings, and even do cool things like add custom overlays and grids. I'll put a link in the description to the full compatibility list because different features are available or not available for different cameras, but it's a great tool if you want to take a laptop, turn it into a camera monitor, and be able to control your camera. Another great little tip is to take one of the many buttons that you can program on Sony cameras and set it up to be a focus hold. When you hold this button, wherever the camera's focus is landing will stay put until you release it again. This is great if you're filming somebody and focus is looking good, but you see vehicles or other people walking into the shot, just hold down that focus hold. The camera will maintain focus until you release it. Alternatively, you can also set up a button to switch instantly between manual focus and autofocus to kind of do the same thing. You could press the button, be able to switch over to manual focus, and then when ready, hit it again, and you're back into autofocus. Our next tip involves the Sony K3M, which is an XLR box that goes on the top of some Sony cameras and gives you a ton of features. One of those features is kind of a hidden one, and that's to create a safety track using a single microphone. Simply take your XLR microphone, plug it into input 1 on the back of the K3M, set your input select to in 1, and then make sure that input 1's level switch is set to manual, not link or auto. You can now set both the first and second input levels to control one microphone. So you could set the first one to be your main audio level and then turn the second input level down a little bit so that you now have a safety track, and if someone gets too loud all of a sudden, you're not going to have audio distortion issues. So it's a great tool if you're just using a single microphone with the K3M. Next, we have Clear Image Zoom, which is a fantastic tool on Sony cameras. If you haven't played with it, you definitely should. And in this particular tip, I want to talk about setting up the settings to be able to quickly use buttons to control it. Often what I'll do is set 2 buttons on the top of the camera to be my zoom out and zoom in buttons. With that done and Clear Image Zoom turned on, you can now essentially have a toggle switch on the top of your camera to be able to zoom in and zoom out even with prime lenses. And you can also set the speed for standby and record independently. And that tip brings us to our next one, which is using crop lenses on your full frame camera. Now, we know that a lot of cameras are able to crop into an APS-C or 1.5 times crop and use lenses that are designed for smaller sensors. But you can actually use Clear Image Zoom to do the same thing, but you'll get a wider field of view. For example, here I am holding a Sigma 30mm f1.4, and here I have the Sigma 16mm f1.4, both great lenses, both designed for crop sensor cameras. However, I can put these lenses on my A7S or my A7 IV, jump in and set Clear Image Zoom to 1.3 times, and I get rid of vignetting, but also have a slightly wider field of view, and I can use these lenses. Autofocus works great, and these lenses are really affordable at under $500 each. And if you do the math on the crop factor, you're essentially getting a 35mm and a 20mm lens, f1.4 for a full frame camera at a great price. So that's using Clear Image Zoom, but some lenses don't even require Clear Image Zoom. For example, here I have the Sony 10 to 18mm, and this zoom lens is designed for crop sensor cameras, but once put on your camera, and if you deactivate APS-C mode, and zoom into around 12 to 16 millimeters, you get rid of vignetting. And now you have a 12 to 18 millimeter f4 zoom lens for your full frame camera. And again, a fantastic option on a budget if you need a really wide lens. The astute amongst you will have noticed that I have an 18 to 35 Sigma lens mounted to my A7S III. Same thing with this guy. If you zoom all the way into 35 millimeters on this lens, you will clear the vignetting, and you can essentially use this as a full frame 35 millimeter f f1.8 lens. So don't be afraid to try taking an APS-C crop lens and putting it on your camera. Sometimes it just works, especially in these zoom lenses, and other times you can just add a slight crop, like a 1.3 times clear image zoom crop, and get prime lenses to work on your full frame camera. And this is a great way to save a lot of money on glass. Our next tip involves turning your camera into a color meter, which is really handy on set. Let's say you're trying to match window lighting with an LED light. Lighting like this is tricky because it's often hard to see color and temperature differences, but you can take your camera, jump into the custom white balance setting, take a reading of the light color coming from the window, and take a separate reading of the LED light, dial in your settings until they match, and you're done. So don't forget that your Sony camera doubles as a color meter, which is just fantastic to have on set. The next thing I'd recommend trying on your cameras is using all of the different remote options available. Some cameras have an IR sensor built in, so you can use IR remotes. Others use Bluetooth, like the Sony Commander remote. And you can also buy affordable wired controllers that go into the USB style multi-connector on the camera, and these will give you a ton of controls like stopping, starting recording, and even being able to turn the camera on and off. So if you're a YouTuber or someone who has a camera set up, to be able to turn the camera on, start recording, and turn on autofocus is fantastic. Next is a small hack that I found works really well if you use touch autofocus a lot on your camera. For example, almost all of the time I have my camera set to the wide focus area and I have eye detection turned on, but every once in a while I need to tap on the screen to take over control of focus and have the camera focus to a specific object. When you do this, there is no way to see where you touched the screen because we're in our wide focus area. But I found if you go into the camera menu, turn on spot metering, and link the spot meter to touch, you now have a little black circle wherever you touch on the screen, letting you know, hey, this is where you touch the screen and this is where the camera is trying to focus. It's a fantastic visual indicator to be able to see where your focus is. And hey, if you haven't tried it already, spot metering is really great in being able to touch different parts of the screen and get readings of your exposure. It's really handy. Another thing you can do to improve the use of your Sony cameras is to change or customize a new menu button. Most Sony cameras have the menu button on the top left. This is a big pain because you need a second hand to be able to access that button while holding the camera with your right hand. Simply going into the menu, customizing a new menu button on the camera is a great idea if you don't want to have to employ a second hand to operate the camera. The last Sony camera hack I have for you has to do with color, and I'm going to go through several recommendations to get the most out of color on your Sony cameras depending on which version you have. If you have a camera that is pre-10-bit, so we're talking before the A7S III, I recommend either turning picture profiles completely off or set it to S-Log2 for your gamma and 709 matrix for your color mode. That's going to give you really good dynamic range and the best color quality possible on those 8-bit cameras. If you want to learn why and how this works this way, I've done a whole video on that and you can check that out. Also keep in mind that I am working on a LUT specifically for those 8-bit Sony cameras, so stay tuned for that and I'll announce that here on the channel at some point. If you have a newer camera that shoots 10-bit like the A7S III, A7 IV, and future Sony cameras, definitely shoot in 10-bit no matter what. And to fix a lot of those yellow and green issues, I've created a LUT that really cleans up color, specifically skin tone. So those are my 10 Sony camera hacks. If you want to learn way more than just what we talked about today, check out my camera guides over at academy.dslrvideoshooter.com. And we have that new Sony a7 IV guide available, and you can save $10 if you purchase it in the next few days as of the uploading of this video. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and for those of you who have purchased my camera guides and LUTs, thank you so much for the support, and I'll see you guys in the next video.